Excellent stuff. So this is just a really quick overview of what the hell I did on my sabbatical. So basically I went to a place called Tristan da Cunha, and so the usual question you get when you say that is Tristan where? And so you plonk it into Google Earth and you get this sort of volcanic island here, and that doesn't really tell you very much. So you zoom out a bit, and it still doesn't tell you very much. It's that sort of dot in the middle of the screen there. So you zoom out a bit more, and eventually it becomes a little bit more obvious. Namely, it's that tiny little dot about halfway between Cape Town on the right and South America on the left. To put that into context, in nautical miles, the nearest inhabited place is St. Helena, which has a population of about 2,000. That's 1,300 nautical miles away, Cape Town 1,500, and so it goes on, about 5,500 from London, which they claim makes it the most remote inhabited island in the world. There's some contention there between there and Easter Island, but basically it's quite a long way away from anywhere. Okay, so how do you get there? Well, there's two parts to the journey. There's the painful but long bit, distance-wise, which is that you fly from Heathrow or wherever down to Cape Town. That takes about 11 hours on British Airways cabin class horribleness. You then take a boat. There's no airport on the island. There isn't space to put an airport on the island unless you demolish the golf course. More on that later. As such, that little tiny bit going along the bottom takes upwards of a week on a cargo ship. There's only 9 ships per year that go there, and a total passenger capacity of about 100 passengers a year, which means that it's quite hard to actually get a space on one of these things. Okay, so that's where it is. Why the hell did I go there? So I do amateur radio, which is basically two-way radio, so you talk to people. Okay, well I can do that with Skype, so why bother? Well, it's a little bit like sailing. Okay, namely, we've got perfectly good aeroplanes, we've got perfectly good internal combustion engines, and yet for some reason crazy people will still sail across the Atlantic under wind power. Why do they do that? Well, it's a challenge, both technical and all the rest of it. It's a good excuse to go travelling, and there's all of the sort of community stuff that goes with that. Okay, so why did I go and do amateur radio in a crazy place in the South Atlantic? Well, it's also a little bit like bird watching. Sorry to Mike Francis if he's in here. Namely that radio amateurs, a bit like bird watchers, like to tick things off lists. So if you give them a list of countries to speak to someone in every country, then they'll go down the list of countries, and they can do England and France and Germany and America and all that not very easily. Once you start getting to places like Mount Athos, Antarctica, North Korea, and so on, it gets a bit harder because there aren't too many radio amateurs in North Korea. And so there's lots of demand for people going to these rare places. Now, if you take this ordered list of rarity and you start at the top, which is North Korea, I didn't particularly fancy explaining to my mum and dad that I was going there, so you carry on to the next one, and that costs you $1 million because you need to charter an icebreaker, and so you carry on going until you get to, out of this list of about 340 at the moment, Dom? Yeah, 340. You get to number 48, which is this place called Tristan da Cunha. So why not? It takes about a month door to door at least, and so sabbatical seemed like a good time. So back in 2010 when they first announced the sabbaticals, excellent, S.A. Gullis II, South African ship, research vessel. 2 of us would go there, get about 3 weeks on the island, so that's about 42 days between sort of person days on the island to play radio. Unfortunately, despite that being 2 years in advance, we didn't get space on that boat, so it all looked like it was going to be off, and we got told that about July this year. Bother. Okay, on the 1st of September, that is 2.5 weeks before I was due to fly down there, we got an email from the guys on the island saying, we've just had a couple of people cancel off the Baltic Trader. We'll give you about 8 days on the island. Do you want the spaces? Yes, please. So that's all good. Got as far as Cape Town. It was me plus a radio friend. Unfortunately, he had to pull out. He got as far as the sort of 5,000 miles down to South Africa, but medical conditions meant that he decided it was unwise to spend a week, well, best part of a month when you are a week away from the nearest hospital. So that took it down to 1 person for about 8 days, or about 8 operator days. So I said you go on this cargo ship, and it turns out you actually meet a pretty amazing group of people when you do that. So this guy is a German doctor here. He's been to every single country in the world. So that puts a new perspective on things, and so it goes on. quite interesting crossing at times. South Atlantic, sort of nearly in the roaring 40s, gets a little bit choppy. This was quite a good day, but we had up to a 7-metre swell at times, and that means the boat, which isn't very fast to start with, it only does about 9 knots. When you're doing 1,500 nautical miles, that takes quite a while. One night we managed 2 knots, not so good, in the wrong direction. First of all, by the way, if ever you're on a cargo ship, never ask the captain when you're going to get there. He doesn't know, and it only pisses him off. So instead what you do is that you get an Admiralty chart, and every morning you go out with the GPS receiver, and then you plot where you are on the chart, and it gives you something to pass the time at least. Anyway, as a result of the bad weather, we were then down to 1 person for 6 days. Okay, getting a bit dodgy, but never mind. It actually took us 10 days to make the crossing in the end. It was predicted to be 7. I don't think they can ever do it in that, so I think it's a bit of a lie really, but there we go. So after 10 days on a boat, where you've basically seen absolutely nothing apart from sea, sky and a few birds, and it really was only a few birds, it's quite a relief to finally see something that approaches land. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning when we came and anchored off the coast of Tristan. It's basically a giant volcano. It goes up to about 3,000 meters. And there's this tiny little bit of flat land. No harbour, you'll notice. So how on earth do you get off? Well, they basically dump you in this cage and lift you over the side of the boat, which is all good. I won't play the rest of it because I've only got 3.5 minutes. Anyway, once you get onto the island, it's actually a really special place. The people there are amazingly, amazingly friendly. They do have a bit of a traffic problem, namely they have the occasional traffic jam. Basically, most of the food that they eat, they grow themselves, they do a load of farming, they all have vegetable gardens and so on. But they do have internet, 1 megabit a second shared between 260 people. Yeah, that's quite fast, but not to worry. As for what I was doing, I was sat in this guest house here with a few bits of fishing rods stuck up in the garden that sort of formed radio aerials. So of course you go in there, you rearrange all the bedroom furniture, throw the drawers in the pile and turn it into a desk. So this is where I sat for most of the day. And what did it sound like? That's about 50 to 100 people probably calling me at the same time. I'm trying to pick out one person and figure out what on earth they're saying to me, but at which point I can then write them down. Hopefully I'll get there in a second. So this is picking up that call sign. So that's when it's narrowed down to 1. And that's 1 contact. So, and you keep doing this for about 10 hours a day or whatever. It's actually really good fun. It's not relaxing. Anyway, we had really bad weather on the way over. Unfortunately, we then had really good weather when we were on the island, so they unloaded this cargo ship really quickly, and it left early again. This meant that from the 42 days we originally hoped to have, we actually got 4. I actually got 4 on the island, which was a little bit of a shame. So you're away from home for the best part of a month in return for 4 days. Not the best investment, but great fun. Getting back onto the boat, they just throw a ladder up the side, and that was nice and easy. And that, by the way, is what the island looks like, to give you an idea. That's only up to about 1,000 meters. You can see there, the rest of it's in cloud. So what did this all turn out to be? Well, in those 4 days, I made 4,271 of those contacts that you just heard with 3,300 different people. And it's a worldwide thing, so about 60% to Europe, most of the rest to North America, a bit of all the other continents as well, apart from Antarctica. And that turned into mostly the USA, all that sounds familiar, RG1, Italy, Germany, Spain, England and Japan. Total of 97 different countries in 4 days. You might have seen on the forums that there was a thread going around about why on earth I had so many of these $1 bills to get rid of. Well, it turns out, having spoken to one of these rare countries, people want to actually confirm it. So they send you what's effectively a little postcard that says, I think I spoke to you at this time, can you please tell me that I'm right? And that lets them take it off their list and get a certificate. Obviously, I don't want to spend 4,000 times 87 pence, which is the cost of a stamp, on return postage, and so they include $1 bills to cover the cost of the stamps. Therefore, my kitchen cupboard looks a little bit like this, and I have about $300 of $1 bills. And with 16 seconds to go, that just about made it in 10 minutes. Any questions, other than, am I insane? Yes?
What is it backwards for?
Sorry?
On the boat, so you're in the wrong direction, so we just blow you backwards or something?
No, so it was more, so the Great Circle path is east to west, pretty much just due west, and we ended up going north. Because basically, if you've got the swell coming from a certain direction, you don't want to be going straight into the swell, otherwise it starts, the bow of the boat basically comes out of the water and then crashes back down, and it sends a little shockwaves through it and breaks the boat. Sorry, Simon, you go.
Did you get any sleep at all?
Yeah, reasonably. Loads on the boat because there's nothing else to do. I managed to flatten my Kindle in a week, even though it was on aeroplane mode. Yeah, Jason?
What about that golf course?
Oh yeah, so there is a golf course. I don't know how many holes it is, but one of the passengers who was on the boat with me spent 3 hours on the golf course and never once reached the green. While she didn't claim to be a golfing professional, it turns out that one of three things happened. You hit the golf ball, it's either hit one rock, hit another rock and bounce back to you, secondly landed in a cow pat, or thirdly you would hit it, one of the border collies, of which there were quite a lot, went and fetched it and brought it back. So all in all, not so conducive to par 3.
What do they do on the island besides farm cows?
So the export industry mostly is fishing. So they do a load of crayfish fishing. They've got a fish processing factory on the island, and then they export it to Japan and America, and it goes for I think about $700 for 10 kilos. And they fish about 186 tons a year or something like that. So that's one major industry. Obviously, farming, etc. A bit of sort of government and tourism work. So post office and stuff like that. So yeah. In terms of salaries, the average salary, or indeed pretty much all salaries, are pretty small by UK standards, but then you realise that there's basically no cost of accommodation. They all build their own houses, they all own their own houses. The cost of food is pretty small because you grow most of it yourself, and it's basically impossible to have poverty there, because if you are, then your neighbours will just give you food. And their idea, I was full board, and their idea of a meal for one was an entire cottage pie, an entire banoffee pie, like another bowl, like a whole bowl of stuff. I ended up with like an entire fridge full of food that I just physically couldn't eat. It was amazing. Any other questions?
What's the latency of a radio communication from there to here? Is it perceivable?
So around the world, you can, if your signal goes all the way around the world and gets back to you, you can just hear your echo as you take your foot off the push to talk. It's probably, around the world, it's 7th of a second or something, 200 milliseconds, so it's not perceivable on the short path. The one other thing to mention is because of this solid great volcano behind me, if you get a globe and plot the path between Tristan and Australia, it goes through the volcano. So the only way to work the Australians was to go the long way around. So you actually go to Australia, it was over the east coast of America, over the North Pole and around. And to New Zealand, it was pretty much north, straight over England, over the North Pole and around. So those guys were pretty hard to spit, and hence the Oceania figure of 0.5% or whatever it is. So that was a grand total of about 10 or 15 Australia and New Zealand.
Did you take all your own gear?
Yes.
There?
Yep. Yeah, and we've left various bits there, so if anyone else goes there, then the folk at Lost Poles, it's cheaper not to ship them back, because British Airways want 75 quid a bag and they only cost 25 quid each, so just abandon the things there.
Cool. Where would you go next?
So Pitcairn is the equivalent island in the Pacific. Not quite so rare and more expensive to get to, but it's similarly remote. Actually a bit easier to get to, there's more boats and charter a ship, but that's, like I say, it's expensive because it's basically London to Los Angeles to Mangareva to somewhere else to Pitcairn, so it's quite an expensive trip. Scotland next year.
So it's the 42nd most rare place.
48th or something, yeah.
How can it be? I mean, this seems. How can it be 47 places that are harder?
So the definition of country is a little bit not what you might expect. So it includes geographically separated stuff. So some of the very remote islands are, oh come on, don't mess around. So some of the remote islands are classed as countries, hence Tristan. So Tristan is actually a British overseas territory. But sorry, I'll just get you the list and it'll kind of become a little bit obvious as soon as the internet works. So most of the top 47 are either politically difficult, like Korea, North Korea, or geographically difficult in that you need to you need to charter ships or helicopters or whatever. Log. Any other questions while I'm just getting this?
How long has the island been inhabited?
I think 1906, I think. So this is Navasso Island, which is actually just off the US coast, is a US Fisheries and Wildlife Service reserve, and they don't allow visitors. Then you're into North Korea, South Sandwich, which is in Antarctica, Bouvet, that's politically contested between Indonesia and somewhere else, Philippines or something like that. Crozet similarly. Herd Island, which is Antarctic as well, and you can only go to Herd Island if you come from Australia, which means it's going to cost you upwards of $1 million to charter the icebreaker.
I can go to Amsterdam.
Amsterdam and St. Paul Islands are similarly. So basically, they're all crazy islands in the top list. Eritrea, which is easy to get to but politically hard. Mount Athos counts as a country. There's one monk who's a radio amateur there. When that bloke dies or gives up, it's going to shoot straight up the list because there's no one else that goes there. And similarly, Yemen and Iran, and so it's all a little bit crazy on the top. And then Tristan comes in here.
Do you make any contacts that you hadn't had before? Any countries you hadn't on the list?
I can't remember which of them though. So I got one of these QSL cards from Azerbaijan this morning, which celebrated the 85th anniversary of their first amateur radio license. So they've had Eurovision and the 85th anniversary. big year for back. If anyone wants to see it, it's on the desk. Cool. Thank you.